Verse 10. And he called the people to him and said, hear and understand. It is not what goes into the mouth that defiles a person, but what comes out of the mouth. This defiles a person. Then the disciples came to him and said, do you know that the Pharisees were offended when they heard this saying? He answered, every plant that my heavenly Father has not planted will be rooted up. Let them alone. They are blind guides. And if the blind leads the blind, both will fall into a pit. So it's obvious Jesus is not worried about offending people. He's not worried about decorum. He's not worried about custom. He is worried about something which is so much more important than traditions. He's worried about the truth, because it's the truth that'll set you free. Verse 15. Peter comes to him and says, explain this parable to us. Jesus said, are you also still without understanding? Do you not see that whatever goes into the mouth passes into the stomach and is expelled? But what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart, and this defiles a person. For out of the heart comes evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false witness, slander. These are what defile a person. But to eat with unwashed hands, it does not defile anyone. Now, this is the perfect follow-up to last week. We were talking about communion and stuff. You think Jesus is worried about us eating his actual physical flesh? It's doubtful. If what enters our mouth can't defile us, how in the world can what we eat sanctify us? No. Communion is not about bread. Communion is not about his flesh. Communion is about the heart. It's about being in communion with the living God. Now you would think that getting this direct lesson from the Lord, Peter would get it. But as is most often the case, we need to relearn things again and again and again and physically experience them before we actually learn them. Now, as we talked about, a lot of these rules were about separating Jews and Gentiles. And one of these examples is in the Levitical laws. We have that God prohibited the Jews from eating various different foods. Now, the reason why is he says they're an abomination. So what does that mean? It's basically they're nasty. Most of these foods, I know you probably like eating pork, you probably like eating shellfish. The reality is they're bottom feeders. They are nature's garbage disposal. They are unfit for human consumption. Therefore, God told his people, I don't want you eating that garbage. Now, after Jesus' resurrection, they didn't suddenly become healthy. They're still unfit for human consumption. But after the resurrection, there's something far more important than your physical health. It's the spiritual health of all those people that are lost. And he wanted God to reach out to those people. Now think of every meeting we have, every celebration we have, family gatherings. Today, we just had a birthday celebration. What do? We do it over food. That's how people commune. They commune by eating together. And these rules were a major block between the Jews and Gentiles. And it's for that reason that in Acts 10, Peter has a dream where God tells him, go ahead and eat. Whatever you see, go ahead and eat. And it wasn't because these foods have changed somehow in their substance. It was that this evangelism was more important. So in verse 15, when he says, do not call anything impure that God has made clean, what God's really talking about to Peter was Gentiles. No longer think of them as dogs. So God's telling them, don't worry about what goes into your mouth when people's souls are in jeopardy. Go ahead and eat with Gentiles. Share the gospel with them. 1 Corinthians 8. Paul takes us even further than just unclean animals. He tells us that we're now permitted to eat food that is sacrificed to idols. Because to us who know the living God, an idol is nothing. It's a joke. It's a statue. It's irrelevant to us. So we now have permission.